Hello, everyone. My name is Melody Hom, and welcome to Yahoo Finance's Breakouts, our monthly interview series where we speak with the most innovative, inventive, entrepreneurial folks in the business world today. I have the immense pleasure of speaking with Jen Wong, the Chief Operating Officer of Reddit today. Let's welcome her to the stage.
Hey.
Hey.
Thanks.
Nice to see you.
For having me.
Yeah, take a seat. And the water is here for
Thank you.
when you get parched. So Jen, thank you so much for being here today.
Thanks for having me.
It is a very busy news week.
Indeed.
As people in the audience might be aware, right now President Trump is speaking about, potential impeachment inquiry that Nancy Pelosi did start yesterday. Minor news.
Yeah.
Reddit often dubs itself as the front page of the internet.
Mm-hmm.
And inevitably, politics is part of that conversation. How, we were checking the app right before we got on stage. How are these topics doing on Reddit right now?
I mean, our politics is on fire, no surprise. So that's our subreddit for politics. And I think I saw something like 20,000 comments on this mega thread. So we have human moderators, obviously, who that subreddit's big, so it's got like 50 moderators in it, I think. And they have this mega thread going with like 20,000 comments. But my favorite thing to see is if you click on in trending, Pelosi or impeachment, the first thing you see is I think something like 50 or 60 links to different points of view on what is going on with the impeachment. And that's very Reddit and very our politics, which is, hey, you all should read this. It's a lot to read, and make your judgment on what's going on here. I'm not going to tell you what to think. You can see what the commentary is. And that's very Reddit. Like, a lot of people come and are like, hey, I want to see both points of view, all points of view, and sort it out for myself. And so that's kind of what the community thrives on.
Yeah, when it comes to what ends up getting the most validation or the most upvoting, do you feel as though they are the hotter takes, inevitably, or the ones that seem to be the controversial point of view, or do you feel as though there's actually space for dialogue? Or to your point, is it just random links where they're not actually speaking to each other and they're just kind of shouting into the ethos?
So the way, if you actually open it up, you'll see 50 or 60 links, and then you'll see the 20,000 comments.
Right.
So there's a lot of room for commentary on Reddit. It almost sort of defies the zeitgeist, right? The zeitgeist now, and you saw this in probably the Mary Meeker presentation, is every bit of communication has moved to photos and videos, and everybody doesn't want to deal with words anymore.
That's so sad for our occupation.
Right, it is sad, but that's not what we see on Reddit.
Right.
I mean, we see 50,000 words a minute, which is astonishing. And I think the reason why you see that is because there are just some conversations that require words. If you're going to talk about impeachment, which is a very serious and complex topic, you kind of need words if you're going to go into that level of depth. And that's why our communities have that kind of depth, because they set up their rules, they foster that conversation. If you're going to talk about, hey, I'm deeply in debt and I need help, you need words to help someone answer that question or to express what that situation is.
Yeah.
So, communities kind of defy logic in that sense, because they actually thrive on words. And the quality of conversation is really, really high as a result.
Yeah. The last point on politics I kind of want to address, just looking at 2020, regardless of impeachment, Andrew Yang is the Reddit candidate, right, in many ways, where there is a sense of a lot of people clustering together to and foments conversation. You see that a lot on Twitter as well. When you look at the candidates across the board, are there folks that kind of stand or rise to the top when it comes to the chatter on Reddit?
I think what Andrew has done well is I think he understands Reddit and the community and the power of the community, and has invested in understanding that and making it part of how he communicates. I think other candidates have done that as well. We saw this in the midterms, where we had a lot of candidates come through. It's so early.
Yeah.
It's just like, this is good. Like, anything now is like, doesn't matter, I think, for what is to come.
as we have seen from previous elections.
Yeah, so I wouldn't even deign to think about anything now applies to what's going to happen in 9 months.
I think the intersection that Reddit is able to encompass, whether that's editorial and tech, social media, is really unique, right? And you have a very interesting vantage point that seems original from your cohort. Even thinking about your previous experience as Chief Operating Officer of Time, which at the time that role was carved out, it was a new role that you stepped into, that's purely editorial, right? And then now you're facing this whole monster of a platform that already existed. What has been the biggest challenge as you've made this transition to Reddit about 1.5 years ago?
They're, I think on the outside, they're very different beasts, and they play different roles in people's minds, right? Publishers are about brand, specific audience. You kind of know what you're getting, that context. And I think when people think of Reddit, sometimes they abstract it to platform, and platforms are typically devoid of context and don't have that. But the reality is Reddit actually has a lot of the characteristics of a publisher. Publishers are known for context and the communities, because all of Reddit is just 100,000 plus communities. Your experience has context. And that's what drives the conversation. So for me, for example, I'm an avid Polaroid camera collector. I spend a lot of time there. My context is other people who are obsessed with the Land camera, the SX70. They're not into Fuji Instant. They're into Polaroid, and they're crazy people like me who hoarded the film when it got, went out of service 10 years ago.
Right.
And I have 2 fridges of this.
Wow.
So, that context is what publishing has, and will provide that high quality of experience. I think the second thing is, the idea that you can have discourse. Now that's something that I think is a contrast, right? Once upon a time, I think publishers aspired to have discourse. Like when the internet first happened, they were like, great, on my blog, on my website, we can have comments. And because publishers are not strong in moderation, those comments were not good. And eventually, they took away those comments. And actually, those comments went to platforms, and a lot of those comments today are on Reddit, where they're much better. We're known for our comments because of moderation. And we set up rules, we have governance in order to have those comments be good. And as a result, we have kind of in the internet ecosystem large, they're kind of complementary. And so I see the different vantage point there from, publisher to platform.
Yeah, I think it's so fascinating. There are about 330 million monthly active users on the platform, 100,000 active communities. And I think some of the groups that have stood out to me are Animals Being Bros, Navy Chief Helping Suicidal Sailors, Male Fashion Advice, Gender Fluidity. There seems to be, they're niche, but they fall under a broader category of people who perhaps want to partake in a bigger conversation that's beyond just, their friends.
Yeah.
I think on the flip side, though, Karen Hepp, the Philly news anchor, sued Facebook, Reddit, among other platforms for a photo from a convenience store captured on a security camera that's now being used in dating and erectile dysfunction ads. Just the contrast and the whole, it runs the gamut, all that's on the platform. How do you make sure that, those kinds of photos won't circulate in the future, and that you can make sure you're timely about that as well?
Yeah. So we take a different approach than any other platform, and we're pretty unique. So our approach is layered moderation, and this is something that is getting better, I think, all the time. At the base of it, we have Reddit Inc. Reddit Inc. writes policies and rules. Think of it as the federal government, and enforces those rules. We build tools to enforce those rules, and that's the layer that actually builds tools for our communities as well. The second piece that's really unique to Reddit is community, right? So every community has human moderators. It has its own rules. Think of it as states' rights that sit on top of the federal government. They provide moderation for the content. And what that does is it means that we have joint responsibility for the health and safety and the vibrancy of Reddit. and they share the burden, and they write their rules and they police their own rules, and we give them tools to do that. We have upvotes and downvotes, which is really powerful. Downvote is a strong, important negative signal. A lot of other platforms do not have a negative signal. It is important to understand the difference between the two.
You can flag something on Facebook, or you can, do the dot,
but it's different when you have a
right.
really strong negative signal, which says, "Hey, this content isn't good. It violates my values. It might violate the rules of a subreddit." Like, I'll give you an example. I had hyperpigmentation in my skin, and I was like, "What is going on?" And I took a picture of it and I put it in. I posted it in skincare addiction because I was like, okay, these people are like skin mavens. They're going to tell me what's wrong with my skin. And I got like the moderator responded and said, "Hey, we don't feel comfortable putting this post in skincare addiction because we're not doctors."
You're like, "I'm the COO. I can do whatever I want."
But it was like, wow, they're really strict.
Yeah.
I was like, they're really, really strict. And I think that's like mostly what happens on Reddit is like those rules are there for a reason for the communities to keep themselves on topic and police themselves. And I think that was right. And that's actually pretty illustrative of what those rules can do.
Isn't there a certain element, though, and correct me if I'm wrong, of people who are competing for the most downvotes? That becomes a gamification in its own way. Like, can we get the most trolls, or can we troll people the most? Is that at all part of your understanding?
Your post just goes to oblivion then. Like, there's no fun or reward in it because it just means you'll never see the light of day. And the second thing is you won't get any karma, right? Reddit runs on reputation and contribution, and it's karma. It's like this total like hippy dippy concept, and it's not going to help your karma. So that's just not how Reddit works.
Yeah, you were gonna say another element of the platform that you thought was interesting.
Yeah, all of that we build. We build our business on top of that, and then the third layer of moderation is our business, right? We're primarily built, is advertising, and advertisers also need governance and moderation and that kind of safety mechanisms and governance, and that sits on top of it. So it's very unique how we approach it, but the concept is that we share the burden with the community, and what that allows for is for them to have nuance in what the rules are. We don't adjudicate all the rules. The communities in their context can set rules and adjudicate and apply, and we can too, and we do that together, and it's very different.
Do you feel like along this journey you have developed more trust in people or less?
Since working at Reddit, I've become much more optimistic.
Really?
Actually, about the internet too.
Wow.
Yeah, I know. It's funny. It's like
counterintuitive.
It
to
is
be honest.
counterintuitive because I think it's like it's a time where you can easily be pretty
cynical,
pessimistic, and cynical about the future of the internet. But the things that you see on Reddit, and there are like all kind of challenges on the internet. We have them on Reddit too. But some of the things you see are the most incredible, like fundamentally heartwarming, humanistic things that you don't see anywhere else, right? Reddit is anonymous. So, and a lot of people, I think, believe that anonymity breeds bad behavior. And what I've observed is that anonymity actually makes people incredibly human and connect, right? So if, in Polaroids, I'll give you an example, I guarantee you there are people in that subreddit who in real life, if they knew me, Jen Wong, Asian female, New Yorker, like blue state person, like may not talk to me, may not talk to me in general, and they're not going to talk to me about cameras, but they don't care because we're there to talk about cameras. And that's really amazing because by being anonymous, we are able to transcend who we are and connect on a very human level. And I think some of the extraordinary things that happen on Reddit are, people are like sending each other medical beds and getting doctors to look at like people's medical files to help them through same, kind of disease conditions. They're helping people get out of like $100,000 of debt by going into like extreme detail about like how to refinance their credit cards, etc. It's
Part
unbelievable.
GoFundMe-esque in that sense.
Yeah, it's just unbelievable that people will take the time to write 1,000 words on how to get out of indebtedness to help someone that they don't know. And again, sometimes anonymity, when you strip all of the surface things that separate us and you just get down to the human part, which is like, hey, I'm a person in need and hey, I know how to get out of debt, that's an amazing connection.
In some of the channels, though, that do end up being filled with vitriol or some extremist commentary, whether that is, neo-Nazis or anti-Semitic language, I think my understanding is Reddit shuts down that channel, right? There's some sort of what's the weeding out process of the bad actors there?
So we have a process by which we have a policy and we apply our policy. We have tools like a lot of technology, but then also human review, just like everybody else, to look at subreddits and individual users who violate our policy and take action against them. And there's a process by which we do that. I feel good about that process, and it has stages to it and criteria. And that's part of why I think Reddit over the last 3-4 years has made a lot of progress in this area.
Yeah.
Because we've done a lot of work in that area as well as with the moderation.
Fittingly, it is ad week.
It is ad week.
As you mentioned, advertising is a bulk of your monetization strategy and your revenue. And as I understand it, about half of the inventory right now is for video ads. So even though you're all obsessed with the text and the words, you still are relying on video for some of your money. Tell me about that strategy and how you've really been able to pitch to investors and advertisers, hey, this is an avenue that you want to come into.
Well, what's interesting is that Reddit is a very different animal. So we kind of start at the basics and say, look, there's social media where the currency is like popularity and followership. There's publishers where the currency is really the editors and influence. And then there's community, which is where we are, where it runs on contribution and karma. It's kind of more hippy-dippy, but real value in exchange. And we believe that there's a movement toward community marketing. If you talk to most CMOs, they'll say, like you say, what's on your mind? They'll say growth, and they'll say community is really important, but I don't know what to do about it, right? So the aperture today, if you ask someone about community, they'll say, hey, I think it's basically having an Instagram account where I talk to my customers or something like that. And you can open the aperture up on community marketing to really think of it as both prospecting as well as talking to customers, but think about it take a long-term view on it. So what's really interesting about Reddit, for those of you who use Reddit, I don't know how many of you use Reddit.
Yeah, who here uses Reddit?
Reddit. Okay, good. So and you probably know this, is Reddit is incredibly forward-looking. So you can invest in Reddit as a marketer for things that are, call it like long-term, 6 months out. And I'll argue it's the only medium, certainly the only digital medium, that can even provide value over, beyond a minute, basically, beyond a very short duration. It could provide value for things that are about to come, like launching in a month, and things that you want to get done right now. Like I want to announce like this offer right now to you. And that's incredibly valuable because if you think about social media and a lot of digital, it's incredibly disposable. Like the half-life is nothing. And if you're a marketer and you invest behind that, all that happens is that you keep spending that money and it becomes like OpEx every year, right? You just spend the same amount because there's no accumulated sustained value. And with community, it is one of the few areas where conversations start now and then grow bigger 6 months later, right? So like movements start and they grow. And so if you're an entertainment advertiser and you drop a series and it's not coming back for a year, how are you going to keep the conversation alive when you have 0 new assets for a year? Well, it's your fan base and your subreddit on Reddit. I mean, it's alive even when there's nothing happening. We saw this with like Game of Thrones, Handmaid's Tale, like these big franchises that go dark and they stay alive for a long period of time.
That's so interesting. I mean, when you think about the fragmentation of the audience, who is your average Reddit user? Because advertisers still want to know, right? Despite the anonymity, they want to understand, okay, are we talking male? Are we talking teens? Can you give us a basic profile of who's on the platform?
I can tell you what, what ComScore says,
yes.
right? It's like, it's like 60-40 male-female. It tends to be millennial, the majority between 18 and 40. There's no surprises for the audience. We're strong in English-speaking territory, particularly the U.S., U.K., Canada, Australia. We're not localized or globalized yet, so we're only in English today. So I don't think any of that probably surprises people.
Yeah. I mean, speaking of ComScore, there were some interesting stats. 17% of Reddit users don't actually use Facebook. 20% of people on Reddit don't use Twitter. 33% of Reddit users don't use Instagram, and 43% don't use Snapchat.
Yeah.
So when you're thinking about the piece of the pie, the humans that you're trying to carve out, what is the opportunity there? How are you really seeing this as a play for people who are kind of disillusioned, I guess, from other platforms?
Yeah, I think unduplicated reach is valuable, period, in marketing. So that alone is like, hey, there's people that you're not reaching on platforms. There's even more unduplicated reach from like a mental psychology perspective, right? So, I may be on Facebook. I'm actually not, but if let's say in theory I was, I'm not on Facebook.
What about Instagram?
I am on Instagram.
What about Snapchat?
I'm not on Snapchat.
You are on Twitter, though, I saw.
Barely.
Cheers. You tweeted a couple days ago.
Yes. You should look at the prior one. Might have been a while ago.
Okay.
But like there's just take my persona on Instagram. I post the stories. It's my family. On Reddit, like Reddit knows things about me that are really me that Instagram would never know. It knows about my passions. It knows I'm spending a lot of time trying to figure out how to make pizza right now and failing miserably at it. So all of these things. And so not only, do we have unduplicated reach, we have different mindsets and data on people. Because again, when you're anonymous, you can be your real self. And I'm going to know things about you that others won't.
When you think about the radical transparency that you are positing within the Reddit forums, there are 500 people now working at Reddit. It's no longer startup territory, right? How are you managing to be a great, effective leader and using that same approach as you govern, as the chief operating officer?
Yeah, it's funny because time was 7,000. So 500 feels
small potatoes.
Not small. I love it. It's what I wanted when I left Time. I wanted to return to growth, and I love this stage of company. It's like I love the phase of like you have the MVP, you're building a business that's going to sustain the company and make it, self-sustaining and self-propelling, and it's just growth. It's like. You set your own bar for what the slope of the line is going to be. It's actually like a magical stage, and I think we have a very strong sense of mission at Reddit. It's a 14-year-old company that's had years in there that were kind of wild, different, and it's taken since Steve came back in like 2015, 2016. We've been on a very, very good path, and I think a lot of people are cheering for this company and this platform that has always done something different. And, I feel the weight and excitement of that mission, and so does the company. And for me, it's like, it's such a dream experience. We're only 500 people. Our competitors are thousands of people. So sometimes people forget that, and they have expectations of us that, are of a 10,000 person or 30,000 or 100,000 person company. And that's kind of the challenge sometimes.
Yeah.
Is that difference.
I think a lot of folks who come through breakouts, they kind of echo what you're saying, that they love when it feels as though, okay, we're breaking through and you're kind of past the early stages, we're past seed, we're past Series A. As I understand it, you closed your last public round with Series D, and that was earlier this year. And Tencent is actually an investor this time around, bringing your post-money valuation to around $3 billion. I knew you were going to shrug, but had to say it. When you think about Tencent as an investor now, that changes up the equation a little bit. Now you have a Chinese company that, Tencent is known to censor some of the content there. How are you making sure that the wild, wild west aspect of Reddit can complement and exist even with this kind of a stakeholder?
Yeah, I think they are a very smart investor who does not take any active role in our business at all. And we're not planning on going to China. I don't think there's any exposure there. Like, we don't, as a result, that doesn't have any conflict in any way. And, my view is, the investors are totally hands off. When things are going really well, just do your thing.
Right. So no news is good news, basically. No communication. I think your background is really interesting for people in the audience. We have aspiring entrepreneurs, we have a lot of students, and seeing the way that you've kind of journeyed throughout your career. You have your master's in engineering of economic model. I'm going to butcher it. Master's in engineering of something.
It's like ridiculous
See,
they killed the department because nobody could say the name. It was Engineering, Economic Systems, and Operations Research, which I called eyesore.
Oh, wow.
That's pretty much what it was.
So yes, you have your master's.
I have a master's.
You also have your MBA from Harvard.
Yeah.
You also went to Yale for applied mathematics.
It means I'm broke. That's what that means.
So you need
I'm still paying off debt.
So you need an exit strategy real fast with Reddit, basically. But even as you've carved out your career, you started at McKinsey, and then you slowly moved into media. Yeah. And you're at Pop Sugar and AOL and HuffPost properties for some time.
Yes.
What has been the biggest challenge for you, or a biggest breakthrough, I suppose, that you realize this is where I need to be and this is the right path that I am on?
Well, I was a math major, and when I graduated college, I wanted to work in music. That's what I had done in college. I was like one of those marketing interns, and it was my passion. And then I got my offer, and it was $18,000 a year. And I was like, ooh, this doesn't work with student loans and 7.5% interest rate. And as a math major, I was like, okay, I'm going to get a real job. And I did quantitative financial evaluation work. And I did that for a long time. It was responsible. It was not that exciting. It was not very me. And at some point, it's pretty amazing how these things happen. I was living in London, and this friend of a friend came to visit, and he was like, oh, coffee, I gotta go. I'm studying for my GMAT. I'm like, oh, why? Why are you going to business school? He's like, oh, I hate my job. I want to change my career.
You're like, me too.
I was like, me too. And I took the GMAT, and by the next year, I was gone.
Wow.
And it was the biggest reset button. MBA is an amazing thing. If you use it for a reset button, it's incredible. And I reset. I was like, and it's one of these things, when I was in college, I had a website, and it was on Netscape Mosaic, and I coded in HTML, and it never occurred to me, oh, I could do this for a living.
Yeah.
And so Web 1.0 came and went. I lived in the Bay Area, and it just it was another planet just happening. I had no idea. And then I finally was like, no, that's what I should be doing. Consumer internet is where I should be. And I made that change. And the reason why I went to McKinsey after business school is because I didn't know diddly. If I wanted to go into media, and you could ask me, hey Jen, do you want to go into sales, marketing, ops? I'm like, all sounds great. Yeah. I could do any of them, maybe. And consulting is one of the great things about consulting is that you can peek under the hood and kind of shop around and try things on for size, and you kind of get a sense of what fits with you. And by the time I had done that and learned a lot there, I could leave and get a sense of, what it is that I wanted to do.
What would you be doing right now if you weren't the CEO of Reddit?
What would I be doing? I mean, there are other growth companies that I love. I mean, Reddit's such a perfect fit because it's like in the ecosystem. It's at the center of so many important things and content, et cetera. But I can get excited about so many different companies. Like I tend to be a consumer person. I have to
not a SaaS play here.
No, I have to, and it's too sad because SaaS is very good.
Yes.
They're very good businesses,
Yes.
right? And you think about all the next arc of the internet is like machine learning and AI, and a lot of that value is going to come in B2B. B2B are like steady, high margin, 40% net margin cash businesses. They're incredible businesses. So if you're rational, that's where you go. I'm irrational because I love consumer businesses, and consumer businesses on the internet are hard.
Yes.
But
I want to be mindful of everyone's time. If you start to have questions, if they're percolating in your minds, please start lining up as we'll open it up to Q&A in a few minutes. We talked a bit about this. Given all of your experience, and you're so smart, you're very talented, you clearly have a great resume, why are you not the CEO of a high growth startup?
I think for some people, being CEO is like a life mission. A little bit of a box, but like a personal, thing
A bucket
that they
list,
want,
like,
a bucket list
yep.
thing. But just like founding a company, like
Yep.
I gotta do that one day and hang on my own shingle, or I gotta climb Everest. Like it's a thing. It's not a thing for me. It's leading and growing businesses and building. That's a thing for me. I love that, and I may want to be CEO of a company one day. Like, that sounds interesting and exciting to me, but it's not a box I have to check. And I'm not going to make sacrifices or contort myself for that box and sacrifice other things that are important to me, like maybe the mission of the company, the context in which the company is operating, the team, the culture, the mission, those kinds of things.
One of the startups in the New York ecosystem that had been getting a lot of attention, a lot of hype, was WeWork. We know that the CEO is out.
The other one rolling the news cycle.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
The other one, there's Trump and WeWork.
Yeah.
When you think about, Adam Newman gone, and thinking about the valuation and a lot of the buzz initially, and now kind of the downfall, what is your take on the path to profitability, or how important that is in the private market before you even have the audacity to say, hey, we want to be a publicly traded company and be a grown-up now?
I believe in building good, sustainable businesses. This is the really rational side of me. And just having worked at 2 public companies, and the last one been an officer, and dealing with investors as stakeholders, like it makes sense that you want to have a business that can be self-sustaining. By the way, I think that's the responsibility of the leadership of a company. If you believe in its mission, the only way that it can sustain that mission is if it can economically sustain itself. And I'm a firm believer in that. And I think that investors have moved to that mindset in general about tech companies, and I think that's healthy. I think that's how companies will be judged in the future in public and private markets, and I think that's healthy.
And what about a Reddit IPO?
I mean, IPOs, in my opinion, are never goals. Again, it's not a checkbox. It can be a funding source, it can be something along the way, but it's like you're building a great company that's self-sustaining. Everything else may happen along the way, but not the goal.
That's a good point. Now we'll take some questions from the audience. We have time for a couple, if anyone wants to jump up.
Hi, Jen. How you doing?
Hi, good.
My name is Robert.
Hi, Robert.
And, I just want to say first and foremost, really love your ideals, your sensibilities. I connect with it inherently. I don't have a Facebook, Twitter. I have a YouTube, but I don't use it. So basically, I use Reddit and Instagram. And
Right on.
I'm an artist in different platforms, music and curation for art shows. And I gotta say, you're definitely right about by creating giving the like different types of groups autonomy. From that, the people who are impassioned about whatever that is, in any category, it does allow people to, like, if you're into it, feel motivated by it. So, because I've been doing shows based on things that are not necessarily in the zeitgeist or like the popular culture trending things, but there's that pocket of that thing, whatever it might be, that people gravitate towards. So that keeps like the momentum going. So
We want to be mindful of everyone's time.
yeah.
Fascinating.
So I just want to say,
but
no, I have nothing to ask her.
Oh,
I'm
oh,
just
so
telling
it's a
her.
comment. Yeah.
Yeah. So
Well,
I'm
thank
just
you.
telling her that keeps the
Yeah.
momentum going, so that certain people like me might be able to manifest something from it, because now you have a community around it. So I just want to say I appreciate that, and I'm a product of that. So
Thank you.
Peace.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Really appreciate that.
Thank you.
Hi, first up, Jen, I want to say thank you for coming out and giving so much insight and advice. So you speak on as far as like the community aspect on Reddit. How soon did you start catering to their needs? It's a two-part question. And then like how soon how soon did you start catering? Like how did you know when you need to start giving these communities in some shape, form, or fashion like the attention that they needed?
Yeah. It's a really good question, actually, because Reddit, at the beginning didn't have the tools that empowered people to self-build, and that was part of its evolution was, hey, you can, the company didn't create topics, now you could create topics, and hey, now you can create rules and moderate them. And that was an evolution. It was not like a day one vision. If you hear Steve and Alexis tell the story, it was an evolution. I think there's always been a value at the company and on the platform about empowerment and letting humans do what they do in real life on Reddit as much as possible. Like, we often say we're one of the most human companies on the planet, because what we're trying to do is let people do the things that they do, like what humans only can do in real life, which is like connect, congregate, change the world, have those important dialogues, and do it themselves, right? And so, but that value has become a cornerstone of how we build product, how we build our business, like how our company runs. It is everything. Like, unlike other companies, when we release product, we talk to the community, we get feedback, and it's a dialogue that slowly seeds within the community. We don't take a paternalistic view like, hey, I'm giving you this feature and you'll use it like X. We're not like that. Like, our philosophy is that the community is always smarter than us, and they will do things that we can never anticipate with what we give them. They're more creative, they're smarter collectively. Like, let them do the hard work.
Thank you. Thank
Yeah.
you.
Yeah, and these are the last two questions.
My question is, right now, I think you were saying that you wanted to try to increase ad sales. From where you guys are right now to where you think you can be, and I'm thinking like you said your readership, your usership is like 60-40 male versus female. So I'm thinking one factor is maybe women just shop more than men do, or women make the shopping decisions more than men do. And then I don't know what your income level of the usership is. So how much potential is there for growth in ad sales?
I think there's a lot because we have big audience and because we're pretty unduplicated in the two ways I mentioned before. Right. So there's just, if you don't invest, you're just not talking to certain people. And the third is it's unduplicated in certain contexts. You're not talking to people in the context in which they're buying a home good or renovating or dealing with pizza problems. And so I mean, when you look at the comps of our peers, you look at our user size and their size, it would imply that we would be a very large business, and that is what we're building.
Is it? Okay. Sure, applause for that. Is it at all a conflict from kind of the not reinvention of Reddit, but to your point earlier, there was this window of time where it's kind of like, anything sticks, there's not moderation at all, and it's a different era of the internet right now. Are you at all in talks with federal regulators? Is this something where you are trying to proactively be speaking with government officials, just seeing your counterparts in the space?
Yeah. I think as a platform, you're in the dialogue, and, we're big, so we're important and, significant. But from a business size, we're, small from that perspective. The dialogue that we have, and a lot of this is public dialogue, but what we try to get out is platforms are really different. They're just very different than each other, and they can't be treated as one size fits all, right? I talked about the layered moderation and the structure of communities and the concept of joint responsibility and burden. That moderation doesn't exist in any other platform. So, our perspective is what's very important in all of the dialogue, and I understand, all the dialogues and the concerns that people have, is to just keep in mind that platforms are actually all different animals.
Hi, Jen. My question kind of piggybacks with the other question. When thinking about Reddit's self-sustainability, I can think back to over a decade ago when Reddit didn't even serve ads really, and then ads were introduced. When thinking about Reddit's core user and the generations to come, they're not huge fans of advertising, so this is conjecture, but right now I'm thinking Reddit's core revenue is probably coming from advertising. When you think of how revenue could be coming in the future, do you think that you'd be focusing strictly on serving ads to people, or if there's other ways you imagine Reddit
Great
growing?
question. So today our most mature business is ads, and I agree with you that I do get the question sometimes where people will say, well, don't communities not like ads, et cetera? It's actually not true. What communities want is advertisers to be equivalent citizens as users. Follow the rules, advertise natively, talk in the vernacular of Reddit, don't stick out and do something that doesn't make sense in context. It's like the basic things we expect from any user. And we've helped advertisers do that, so that's worked really well. We have another revenue stream which we're building, and I think is going to be very material for us. It's more nascent, which is around awards. So today on Reddit, because the economy is about contribution and karma, people pay money to buy a virtual currency, so Reddit coin, in order to give each other awards. That's it. Literally the only thing you do is buy an award and say, great comment, great post. It's incredible. It's
hard
a
to
big
believe,
revenue
to
stream.
be honest.
It's hard to believe, but it's it's with very little work. It's over seven figures. It is a big opportunity. And if you think about the level of engagement on Reddit and that exchange, we think that's going to be a much bigger part of the experience on Reddit. Because today people pay to just praise each other, which is amazing. It's great.
And I mean, on your point though, when you think about the premium feature, which is an offering, which is a monthly subscription, or you can pay an annual fee, as I understand, it's $30 for a year. And that's no ads, right?
Yeah.
Or
So
the idea is that would be a no ad model.
See, you know this better than I do.
Well, but
this is great.
I'm not pitching this as a
No, but you reminded me that, so the other idea, the other value we have at Reddit is that we try to give people choice. So you have a choice. If you take ads, site's free. If you don't take ads, you can shut them off and pay. You can choose. So we also give you that choice as a user.
And do you think that will be the new model for media? That
Subscription?
Yeah, just the paywall. And we've seen that come up across the board, whether it's the Vanity Fairs of the world or Business Insider, all of our counterparts too. We have a premium feature as well, but that's more for chart usage.
Yeah.
When you think about that, is that going to be in 10 years the new norm?
I think everyone will try their hand at it. As with video, being unbundled is very hard, and you see rebundling happening. So it's possible that could be make publishing more sustainable than just a pure ad-based model. But within that, there has to be some bundling, I think, because the friction for consumers is just too high. I mean, forget about the financial side, the financial logic of it, but just the experience isn't good. So I think it helps, but some structural things would have to change.
And just to end on a fun note, what is your ideal bundle? We talk about cord cutting all the time. What is right now your makeup of the things that you love to spend time on?
Yeah, I mean, I've got, Netflix, Hulu, et cetera. I'm really excited about the Disney bundle. I have a 2-year-old. I think it's high value. I think it's brilliant. That's, music. I have like every single music source.
Spotify, Pandora.
Everything. Apple Music, all of it. Well, they're all, I'll be totally honest, I find them all imperfect. As a deep music head, I have issues with all of them. My music collection is so big that I literally I can't sync it to Spotify. I don't have enough. There's not enough tracks in the subscription
that
allows
it. That's
such a humble brag. This is I spend a lot of time on my music IT.
Yep.
And so that doesn't work. And then certain tracks aren't on. I'm a big indie music person, so some of these albums are like so small from like the 90s and the the aughts, and they don't show up in some of the streaming services. So I'm in like purgatory when it comes to music services. Like I have all of them, and yet I feel nowhere.
Maybe that'll be your next venture. Thank you so much for a riveting conversation.
Thanks.
Thank you.